Hi, everybody. Welcome to the October 8th Tinderbox Meetup. In our Meetup forums, what we typically do is go around the room and new people introduce themselves. We then have everyone talk about the projects they're working on. And if we have a particular theme of any given week, we'll dive right into that theme. Today, we have a pretty small audience. There's about, what, 6 of us, 8 of us? It looks like about 8 of us. So, and no one's new, so we can just jump right in and ask, are there any projects that people are working on? And if not, I've always come prepared for the crazy antics that I've been doing with Tinderbox. So I've got some fun stuff to share today if we don't have any other projects going on. So let's go around the room. Dave, Kim, what are you guys working on?
Nothing new.
Go ahead, Dave.
Sorry, yeah, nothing new. Just doing the marmot, and this is like my social event for the day, for the week.
Woohoo! I don't know, man. That sounds kind of sad.
Yeah, I'm retired.
All good. All good. What other Kim, you were saying something?
No, I was just saying, I'm just learning the actual application, how to use it. And obviously not spending so much time on it, but getting back to the Tinderbox book, I'm just learning the app. That's all.
Yeah. And again,
and your videos.
Yeah. So and let's talk about that for a minute. So you're making reference to the Tinderbox way for those that might be coming to this video for the first time. And if someone doesn't, while I'm talking, if someone can drop the Tinderbox way book, Amazon book link into the chat, that would be great. The Tinderbox way is kind of Mark Bernstein's manifesto that he wrote years ago on the thinking and the purpose and the reasoning behind Tinderbox, but it's both a kind of way, an approach and a way of thinking, as well as how that thinking is manifesting itself in the tool itself with specific how-tos and interactions. And my biggest takeaway that I've been thinking along these lines is, to be successful in this tool, you really need to, be ready for and willing to rewire your brain a bit and to think about the world differently. And the terminology I learned from that is from, say, all of you basically, is this idea of metacognition. I think I originally got it from Bernardo and from Brazil. And that's where you really start. And I think he got it from Aristotle, actually. And it's really looking at the world through the lens of metadata. How do you break content, thoughts, ideas into their metadata, aka their attributes, and then use a tool like Tinderbox to be able to transform, transclude, transmute that data, that text in such a way that helps you individually and personally, and then you collaboratively with others make meaning from data. And I think Tinderbox is a wonderful tool for us to be able to accomplish that. So in that regard, I think the Tinderbox way is kind of Mark's manifesto on how to go about that process, or his thinking on how he came about building this tool called Tinderbox. But that's been my thinking on it. What are your thoughts on that, Kim?
I was just saying that's good. I think the Tinderbox way is a good primer of just understanding Tinderbox and the creation of it, and how to establish content, inner content. But really, the way they apply it doesn't really give you application per se, but the application will be your videos and this form as well. Learn how to use it. I think the main question I've always pondered, been put out there. Well, what do you want to do with Tinderbox? That's the main question to ask, because it does basically everything, not just mind mapping, but you just have to figure out what you really want to do with it, and learn all the toolings, of course. But the best source I've seen right now is going to be your videos on this Tinderbox form, and this form itself right here, asking the questions, open form, to get a better appreciation of Tinderbox. Are you trying to find out the better knowledge management tool, personal management tool? There's tons of them out there, your own research, but Tinderbox is really the key to it. If you learn how to use it, it does everything, period.
And this is what I appreciate about the tool Tinderbox is, to your point, that and Mark's approach to doing it. When you open up Tinderbox, and why don't I share my screen while we're having this? God, we can do it right now. But when you open up Tinderbox, it starts with this blank screen with none of the tools, none of the utilities turned on, and you really have to start exploring the tool itself to find what you're looking for. It's like going into Home Depot and going down the tools aisle and saying, what do I do with all of these tools? And you can either build nothing, you can build an outhouse, or you can build a glorious Taj Mahal mansion that can stand the test of time. And that really just comes down to your own interest, desire, proclivity to learn whatever craft you have within the domain that you want to do, and then also recognizing that Tinderbox is primarily a tool for manipulating text, and it can work with images if you do so strategically, but it's really a text transformation tool, and that helps you navigate and build your knowledge. And once you start wrapping your head around that, I think you can really do some magical things. But to your point, for me, Tinderbox is like that. It's the best tool I found for and when it comes to personal knowledge management and collaborative knowledge management for enacting the process of praxis, knowledge management praxis. And praxis, Praxis, is the Greek term for putting theory into practical application. And so when I look at Tinderbox, I think of praxis, this idea of putting knowledge theory into practical application. And for me, it's the best tool that I've come across to be able to do that. And one other comment I might say as I'm continuing down my riffing here is, for many, especially in the commercial side, because I'm really adopting Tinderbox as a commercial tool to do my job. And many of my colleagues that I work with in the industry are fearful of it because they look at this tool and they say, well, it's one guy, it's one community working on this tool. What happens if the guy disappears? What happens if XYZ changes? And I get it to a certain extent that you want to be, building in a certain level of longevity into your tool set, especially on the commercial business side of things. And, there's this fear of what happens if the tool goes away. But I would argue, why would you accept for mediocrity out of fear? Right? The tool, and in other words, if the tool is here and the tool is the best that you have available to you, don't let fear get in your way and take advantage of the best tool that's available in the market and be grateful for as long as you possibly can have it. And then also live in a life of abundance and trust that if in some day, one way, shape, or form, or someday later, it goes away, that something will fill that void, or you'll figure it out. But for me, I've learned so much, not just about the tool Tinderbox, but in the way that Mark has created the tool. It's also taught me the fundamentals of computing. I've learned regular expression, I've learned HTML, I've learned CSS, I've learned coding semantics, I've learned metacognition and attribute management, I've learned set theory versus category theory. I've learned all of these things that are fundamental to the nature of computing that can actually have its roots all the way back into the 50s when the first computers started to evolve, such that knowledge is imminently transferable everywhere, not just to this tool. And I think that's one of the things that differentiates Tinderbox from other tools, is that when you're learning Tinderbox, you're essentially learning computing and you're learning other tools, and you're not necessarily becoming a proprietary walk to this one method. What are your reactions to those thoughts? Anybody?
Amen.
All
right.
Michael,
yeah.
The thing that attracts me to this is, basically the world, and Dave Rogers can chime in here since he's lived in the biggest of organizations as an officer, right? And you were dependent on the subject matter experts, enlisted men, right?
Yes.
The biggest of the big.
Warrant officer? Were you warrant officer? What, colonel? What were you? Sorry to digress.
An 05, a commander.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I mean, the biggest of the big depend on the subject matter experts.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. CEOs are replaceable. And what intrigues me about Tinderbox is that it is such a powerful tool. 30 years ago, you had to have a computer, I mean, a room full of hardware.
Yeah.
Do this. And particularly, and I was writing a note to myself, trying to figure out, this is an exercise in cross-generational knowledge transfer.
Okay. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And it is the fact that, I mean, the tool is here. The challenge, as we always hear in these sessions, is what is the problem I'm trying to define and solve? And we always go, oh, the silver bullet. I'm going to find the perfect tool. Well, you get the perfect tool in front of you and say, well, Jesus, I haven't really defined what my problem is.
Well,
Must be the tool's problem.
that brings up another point, though, and that is where Michael was making his reference to Home Depot. I immediately flashed on horror stories of severed limbs and piles of crap in my yard from projects that never got completed because I didn't know what I was doing. But with Tinderbox, what I've learned is that and this is in general with all sort of programming or software development, is that you begin with the simplest thing that could possibly work, and then you build from there. If you start trying to build the Taj Mahal right off the bat, you're going to set yourself up for failure. And if you approach Tinderbox like, I'm going to build my offline brain all at once and create a million, the premature formalization issue we've talked about before, then you're just going to frustrate yourself and wind up with a file and an application that you don't return to very often. So baby steps.
Well, and what, on that note, though, what I really love about Tinderbox is it supports both premature and formalization and incremental formalization. I mean, I can get as premature as I want and hard code a bunch of crap, and then realize, oh, I just boxed myself into a corner. Tinderbox allows you to dial yourself back without loss of data, whereas other tools, whether other tools get destructive. And I found
I completely agree. Sorry, I have a lag out here. I have a lag here. Sorry, so I'm stepping on you. No, I completely agree. I think a couple of my sort of databases have gone through 2 or 3 complete reorganizations. But Tinderbox is so great. Not only has it allowed me to make those transitions to new kinds of organization, but I've also been able to, in some cases, retain elements of the previous organizational system, because all it is ultimately is an attribute allocation. So if I have a user attribute and say, okay, according to my old organization system, this was in, whatever category, just place that in a user attribute that I don't have to use again.
Right.
Yeah, as an everything bucket, it's very straightforward, and you're right. You're not going to risk losing any data. Where the trouble comes in is when you start trying to export those things and use them in other applications or for other purposes, and that can get very, very complicated.
Well, it can and it can. It gets as complicated as you want it to be, and it gets as simple as you want it to be. But I think, and this is where it gets interesting, in that what people, when it gets to export, what people want is I want it the way PowerPoint does it, or I want it the way Word does it, or I want it the way Google Docs does it. And I want it to be pretty, and they're focusing on that pretty outcome. And the thing is that with Tinderbox, you can get there and do that, but that's upon you to learn, or you're leveraging with a community member or members to learn how to write those scripts, write the HTML, create the template that you want, but you have to start taking responsibility for yourself.
Right, but again, I'm just saying that you want to start you want to start very small with modest expectations, because it is a powerful tool and it's very complicated. Just like you can screw yourself over in Excel,
right?
And create a spreadsheet and it works for you in that moment, and then you come back to it 3 months later and you can't recall why you structured it that way and what you were doing.
Correct. And so in that regard, Tinderbox, and then the nice thing about that, and here's the difference I have with Tinderbox versus say tools like Excel. You can build similar Excel-like tabular capability in Tinderbox if you have the right mindset for it. It does take a totally different approach to thinking about how the data is structured. But unlike Excel, you can actually have tomes written about that particular cell or that particular idea. And so, in other words, what I'm trying to say is when you're working in Excel, Excel doesn't really afford you a place to put non-tabular like thinking. So the multidimensionality of Tinderbox's ability to let you think in multiple dimensions, I think is
it lets you add notes, right? Stickies like things. You can append a note to a cell, as I recall. I haven't done that in a long time.
Well, it does. But to your point of export, how do you get
right?
How do you get Excel? You don't.
But my broader point is that Excel can do, a lot of the code that's in Excel, and I use that numbers on Apple includes things like regex. And so you'll create a formula that does something that you can't remember 6 months later what it does. And when you set up your export templates and you're looking at code, and because you don't work in the code every day, you forget what that does, and then you have to kind of reinvent it again. So, baby steps, and then document your work as you go along the way, I think are the two important things that I've learned in using Tinderbox is start small, write down what you're doing so you can retrace your steps. You're not going to risk losing data. That's true. And that instills a certain amount of confidence that may not serve you well. So just
and one other point too is, let's say Tinderbox does go away someday, God forbid, or at least God forbid until I retire. In that, or until I'm dead. Let's not retire because I want to play with it when I'm retired too. Is that the key thing to keep in mind is that because it's based on an open XML structure, you can always open up a file in any text editor, and all of your data is there. Right. So unlike a proprietary software like Microsoft Word, I don't know if you've ever tried to open up a Word document in a text editor and it's completely unintelligible. You lost it all. Whereas with Tinderbox, it's natively there. So somebody else had another comment. Otherwise, I want to pop in and play with the tool a little bit. So get us out of theory. Any other comments, thoughts? David, you had an issue about the Mythical Man Month. You want to raise that for us? What are you talking about there?
Are you familiar or not familiar? Are you not familiar with Mythical Man?
I am, but let's not assume people on the audience are. So why don't you?
Okay. So I'm an IBMer, and Mythical Man Month is the tale. It's a very short book. If you're struggling with Tinderbox or trying to define your problem in Tinderbox, Mythical Man Month is really very, very extremely useful in the software definition, creation, and testing and maintenance. So anybody, has someone here not read it or know?
I've heard about it. I haven't read it though. Do you want to drop a link to the book in the?
Sure, I'll get the link. It's basically and what it is it's the tale, the story of the project manager creating IBM's primary operating system, which is what now Tinderbox and Mac OS are built on top of Unix and a variation of Unix. And there's enormous amounts of IBM knowledge embedded in what Apple offers. There were multiple cross-project work with IBM and Apple. And so, an operating system is an operating system. But it's the effort to define and build and hone. It's a very, very useful book if you're struggling with trying to define a problem and solve it with Tinderbox.
Nice.
And basically, because we are teams of one, you do have to think of yourself as all these different roles of surgeon, co-pilot, administrator, two secretaries. Everybody's got two secretaries, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Language police, language lawyer. And so anyway, that's my 2 cents. So I'm sticking with it.
While we're on the topic of books briefly, before you bring up your screen, Michael, this probably doesn't work because there it goes. This is Sunburst and Luminary. It's a memoir and an account of the guidance program development by Don Ailes for the lunar module, which is fascinating. It was the same guidance computer used in the command module and the lunar module, and it's all basically machine language type programming, but it covers a lot of computer history and a lot of the formalization, where this basically started out with a handful of people just hand coding this thing practically. Every program had to be wired into rope, into the core memory before, you didn't just print out a tape or whatever. They had emulators and simulators that they use. But that's fascinating, and you see how far we've come today with tools like Tinderbox that are just, perhaps unimagined at the time that they were doing Apollo. And we think of the remarkable achievement that Apollo is. And of course, once you read that book, then you read about Don Draper and inertial guidance, and that sends you down a whole bunch of rabbit holes too. But that's all I wanted to say. A little book recommendation there. I'll find a link for it and put it in the chat. But if you're into programming and the history of computers and MIT and Whirlwind, the first compiler came out of Whirlwind. Jay Forrester invented core memory. Anyway, I digress. Go ahead, Mike.
No, it's very cool. So the other thing I wanted to emphasize, and I've heard this a lot, and again, I want to get us out of theory as quickly as possible now, because I think we're getting a bit long-winded, and into some, get out of the theory and into the application part of the praxis. And what I want to say there is the issue that I will often hear is people say, well, I started listening to you guys rant and rave and how great Tinderbox was, and then you started giving me a demonstration that meant nothing to me. Like, I'm not a teacher, or I'm not an author, or I'm not a philosopher. And so I immediately tuned out because I don't care about any of that. And I think what often will happen is people will say, well, if you start discussing about something that isn't falling into my particular domain of interest, right? Like if I'm, Art could start ranting about poetry, and if I'm not a poet, then I don't care. And what I've learned by using Tinderbox is, if you can give yourself the grace and the patience to take a step back and kind of remove yourself from the equation and listen about what's being talked about, and come to it with a beginner's mind and this idea of interest in whatever the topic may be. One, you'll get to learn about a new domain you've never possibly heard about, but more importantly, you'll be able to take the mechanics of a problem that's being solved in one domain and be able to apply it to your own. And if you don't give yourself the ability to dig into some domain that's not comfortable or familiar, you'll never really, in my experience, you don't really get to that ability of getting to the core nuggets of the tool to be able to take the exact same mechanics that are solving one problem in one domain that you can apply into another. And I found that lesson with Tinderbox to be really, really powerful. Would anybody want to refute that or have an alternative position? Or say it in a better way? Or have I just lulled you all into complacency?
No, not disagreeing at all. I mean, I think also that humans have the ability to abstract. That's one of our key distinguishing abilities. And so to be able to sort of give an example from one person giving an example, but other people take their own learnings from it, bouncing it against their own experience and intentions, is what we're good at. And yeah. Fortunately, with Tinderbox, you can sort of do it. You're able to put up an example on the screen for us with things that are realms that I will never probably involve myself in. But I can pull the abstraction from it, the meaning from it, or the ability to extract data using the techniques and tools, which is what makes it so cool.
Right. I'm just taking a note here on abstraction techniques. Okay, I'm just taking a note here for myself. Hi, this is Michael Becker, and I'm giving you a brief interlude before we jump into the remainder of today's meetup. So in today's meetup, just after this brief introduction I'm about to give you, we went into great detail about a grading assessment methodology that I started to build yesterday for grading a class that I'm teaching for Cal Poly in California. Clearly, as I was going through the process, I was racing through the process to get to the end to do the grand reveal and to show people what's possible within Tinderbox. But as we were going through this process, I was consistently starting to lose people, and it was getting a bit complicated for them. So because we were building out the process live, so what I wanted to do is just give you a brief review of the end state before you jump into this particular session. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Oops, and do this and share my screen. Okay, so at the end of this session, you will see this completed file, which we were actually able to complete. And what you'll see here is that I was able to demonstrate how we could set this whole file up to create assignments for students, and then create a rubric to be able to assess those students, add some student names, then be able to grade the students. Like in this case, the student got a 16, they were late, so they got a -1, their final grade was 15, so their grade percentage was 75%. And then I was demonstrating that based on the rubric that we created, leveraging dictionary functionality, I could say, hey, student, you need to work on number 3, number 1, number 3, and number 4. Basically, you did a good job, but you need to remember to test, you need to remember to explain the brand campaign, and you need to improve your citation work. That's the feedback I want to give them. And so here I'm going to write that. Hey, Michael, great job. There are a few things you need to work on. Okay. And then I want Tinderbox to automatically generate and create for me in addition to additional text that I then can provide some quality, consistency, and quantity elements to not just this one student, but all students that I work with going forward. So you'll now see I've got this Boolean called is update assessment. And so if I check that box, click away and now come back, you'll see that Tinderbox is now automatically added in, hey, thoughts for future consideration. Remember to test. You need to explain the objective of your campaign. You need to improve the use of your citations. Basically, I asked Tinderbox to go look up in a dictionary these different feedback points that I want to give back to the student and automatically add those into the student's notes. So now I can copy this and then go email it or to the student or paste it into the grade book within the school's learning management system. That's the objective of what we went through and accomplished. Now, following this, please keep listening. But now you know what the end state is. Hopefully that will help you understand each step that we go through over the remaining hour of this working group meetup, or of this working group meetup, so that you can get a sense of actually how you build a file like this. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to help in any way I can. It's hard to take notes, listen, and talk all at the same time. It's like that gum chewing walking. One of these days I'll get that specialty down. So with that in mind, let's jump to a practical application in theory. And I'm going to tap on Phil Schuerman to help me out on this. So Phil, hopefully you'll be able to guide me through what I want you to do. So the topic I want to present today, or an example I want to present today, is for those teachers in the room, or for any manager that's looking to give feedback on somebody that they've been doing their work. And in particular, what I want to do is, because this is of a personal challenge that I've been dealing with, is I've got just tons and tons of grading to do for a class I'm teaching at Cal Poly. And it's taking me, and I had to think about, how do I want to go about grading my my students' work? And one of the things that was coming to mind, and before I start moving the mouse around and adding stuff and doing all that, is, and I was struggling with this just yesterday, because I was coming up with a new assignment that I had given the students, and I hadn't actually in the process of creating the assignment, let me go ahead and pause so I can before we do that. So in the process of creating the assignment for my students, I hadn't actually thought through how I would go about grade. It was a qualitative assignment, and I hadn't thought about how I was going to go out grading it, or what I was thinking would be an excellent versus average versus failed response, because I've never given this assignment before, so I had no idea what kind of output the students would be giving me back. So I wasn't really sure how I was going to go about assessing it. And then as I started doing the assessment, and I started reading the assignments, I started identifying commonality in what I thought was, what seemed to be a good response, what seemed to be an okay response, and what seemed to be a bad one. And then I was thinking, well, I really need to find a way to memorialize this for myself, so that as I'm working with other students, I can have a certain amount of equity or equality that I can give all of the students, and a certain amount of consistency and quality that are coming from me. So I'm grading one student similar to another student and giving them similar feedback. But likewise, for me, to realize that I could use this grading exercise for this particular individual assignment as a way for me to also be incrementally formalizing my own work. So the next time I teach this class, I'll be that much better, and I'll be able to build on top of the work that I'm doing now. And so I want to demonstrate with you an effort that I was, I figured out with Tinderbox yesterday that I thought was wickedly cool. And I'm going to grab this link from Tom from the chat before I lose it. So with that in mind, let me show you how I went, how the process that I built yesterday for figuring out how to build a grading schema for an assignment I was doing. And then the other thing I was realizing too, and this is another thing I've learned while watching people do or use or listen to people do and use Tinderbox, is they'll say, well, it takes me more time to learn the tool or implement the tool, the thing that I want to have happen in the tool, than it takes me to actually just do the work. And while I would agree that's the case for the first 3 or 4 times you're starting to use Tinderbox, but what I quickly realized yesterday, and I was in that same boat yesterday, I'm like, damn, I've got to get this grading done. I don't want to be screwing around with Tinderbox to get this new framework done for managing the grading. But then I realized I had 3 additional assignments. So I had a total of 100 papers that I had to grade. And if I took an hour and a half to get the framework right, then that's going to make the back half of the work that much more efficient and faster. Plus, I'm going to get the quality I want, the consistency I want, and the quantity I want that I wouldn't necessarily be getting if I just did it one-offs without having the Tinderbox tool, if that concept makes sense. So with that in mind, let me go ahead and share with you what I was doing here. So let's say, and I'm going to go back and forth between a couple of docs that I can share with you. So let's say, and I'll just show you in my real tool. I've got to be careful so I don't show you student names. But let's say, for example, here in the Tinderbox tool, and I'm just still refining my process, but I'll come in and I'll specify what learning objectives I want to have for the tool, for the assignment. And this is a new one that I'm doing. So I'll come back to the learning objectives point in just a minute. This is the idea of incremental formalization. And here I'm telling the students what I want you to do. And again, this is a newer version of the assignment that I'm creating, so it's still a little messy. But I'm saying, I want you to go to simple texting or easy texting, and I want you to go create a free trial account. Then what I want you to do is to go set yourself up a text messaging campaign. And then what I want you to do is think about these different things, remember to tell me about your experience, and then write it all up. So that's an example of an assignment I was giving the students. So let's go ahead here in Tinderbox and we'll call this the assignment. All right. And so I've now got a note called the assignment, and we'll call it assignment text setup text messaging campaign. Now, in the process of doing that, as I'm thinking about doing Tinderbox, in the process of doing that, I immediately just grasp on some concepts that just came to mind. And again, one of the incremental formalization ideas of Tinderbox is that, well, what is an assignment? Well, am I going to have more than one assignment? The second I'm going to start having more than one of anything, I now know I need to go up to the file menu under prototypes. I'm just going to randomly grab one. I tend to, my muscle memory tells me to grab the person prototype. And I'm going to say, that creates a prototype folder for me. And I'm going to say P assignment. Right? Because I know I'm going to want to have a prototype called assignment. And for the lack of a better icon, let's just, I don't know, let's give it a question mark. So I'm going to have, actually, I don't like that one. Give me a icon for assignment. Let's make it that one. Okay, so I'm going to make that. That's going to be the prototype I want for an assignment, and I'm going to go ahead and from my other Tinderbox file randomly grab the different attributes that I have for an assignment, and we're going to go ahead and create these really quick. So a grade type is a set, a type is a set. I've got category. I have points, which is a number. I have, is this a group assignment or not? That's a Boolean. I have what module of the class that's in, that's a number. I have the date available. This is the date the assignment comes available to the students. The date the assignment is no longer available to the students. The date that I want the assignment due. Any terminology or terms that I want that assignment related to. Is there an entity or company related to that? I'll skip that one. And are there any citations related to that? So I've now immediately got all of those different attributes that are available for that particular assignment. So if I were, and now that I've done that, and this is one of the beautiful things of Tinderbox, now that I've done that, I can go ahead and apply that prototype to this assignment I've created up here, and I now get all of those different values for that particular assignment. And in this case, the grading type is points. It's an it's a type for, it's an individual assignment versus a group one. Its category is an essay. In this one, it was 15 points. Its module was part of module 1, and I'm just going to randomly pick dates. Let's say I was, for this particular assignment, since we were doing the class, let's say I made it available on the 4th to the students. They have it until the 18th, and it's actually due on the 16th. So they have a couple extra days to submit it in late if you were to, oops, do the wrong one, 16th, and made it available on the 18th. So that, that just helps you kind of get, and then say this is the terms related to this are text messaging, mobile messaging, mobile marketing, etc. Right. And then then I could add my citation keys if I wanted to relate to that particular assignment. So that's, let's say that's an assignment. Now, as I'm thinking about it and I'm teaching the class, so we'll call this one the assignments folder. Okay, and so I'm going to move that in there, and that's going to make me want to create another prototype called P folder so that I can start organizing my stuff. And guys, please pause me if at any point that you want me to, so I can keep going. But I'm going to keep going down that path. And so since this is an assignment folder, as I've shown you guys before, I go ahead here into the on add. And I'm going to say when I add something to a folder, I want the $ prototype equals pound equals. I think I've told you about the pipe equals before, but if I haven't, I'll reiterate it. Folder. So what the pipe equals is saying, so I'm going to add a new child note to this one, and you'll see by doing that, it immediately becomes a folder. And so I know that my boss is barking out there. So what that does is, because it inherited this node inherited the prototype value here, so P folder. So that immediately became P folder. So anytime I'm adding a new note to this document called P folder is there. Now, what's beautiful about this is, let's say I'm going to type in the person Michael Becker here, and I'm going to make that a person prototype. Now, make that a person prototype. Whoops. Person. There we go. Now, because I have the pipe symbol here, equals a pipe equals. What that's saying is and I'll give you another example. So here's a test. So this note test does not have a prototype assigned to it. So when I move it into into this folder, it automatically adopts the folder prototype. Now, if I move Michael Becker into that folder, Michael Becker does not. Now watch what happens though if I remove the pipe. If I remove the pipe and just say make prototype equal to P folder, when I move Michael Becker in there, Michael Becker becomes the folder prototype. So what that pipe is saying is, if the prototype does not already have a value, then add this prototype P folder. But if it already has a value, ignore it. And as you get a more advanced and more mature filing system, that becomes really, really useful as you start adding multiple types of prototypes in a particular folder that has a default on add to it. And so that's a really important strategy I wanted you to all kind of be aware of as I think about that. But in this type now, we're going to go ahead and make this one key assignment. So anytime I add a new assignment to this one, I'm going to be able to now get the new assignment folders. Now you notice here, I've talked about this before, but I like to have prefixes in front of my notes because that allows me, at a minimum, to be able to distinguish between different note types by looking at their prefixes. So if I had another note called set text messaging campaign, that was talking about text messaging independent of it being an assignment, I could distinguish between those two types of notes. And so having an assignment methodology is really important for me. So let me show you another tactic that I'll do here. I'll go to smart quotes because we want to turn those off because I like to write in this note here. And so I'll say if name equals untitled, I want the name for this one to equal, and for now, I'm just going to say untitled as my default. Right now, I know it will sound silly that I'm trying to, why make untitled equal to untitled, but I'll show you why. In the base level prototype, I always kind of, in my standard methods, I put that in there. And so if I go back up here and I re-inherit this, you'll see now if I create a new prototype folder, now all I have to do here is go and change it. Whoops. I can just say like that. And I can make this one P assignment. So that way I've changed that folder. So now if I add a new one, you'll see that note automatically gets the assignment prefix. And so now I can say like set up RCS messaging campaign. As another assignment. And then what I'm going to do as I'm incrementally thinking about this, I'm going to say, I'm going to say here, because this is an assignment folder. All right, just give me a second. This is an assignment folder. I'm going to go ahead and create that assignment as a set. And now what I'm going to go here is in my edict, I'm going to say assignment equals collect children name. And I'll show you another trick I have in just a minute. So now that I've done that and click away, you'll see that the assignment attribute that I've just created is now collected all of the names of all of my assignments. And so that way, and that's going to allow me to use it in another place in just a minute. Yeah, Mr. Art.
Yeah, I was just going to interject at this point something that had come up with me in the past as well. Is that in the interest of incremental formalization, the tendency to sort of rename things can go awry and can work against your best interests in Tinderbox, because note that if you change the name of a prototype or even the name of a folder, it can break your code.
Right. Yeah, it can. And so you just got to be, and once you get comfortable with Tinderbox and where your code is and how it works, you'll be able to fix that relatively easy, or know if something breaks, you'll be able to fix it. But the faster you can get to, and let me grab this note. I'm trying to create notes from like best practices. Think about it. the faster you can get to your own, and I don't want to, I'm going to be scared before I say this word, your own naming nomenclature that works for you, as David Eddy teaches us so quickly, the better. So for example, for me, all of my prototypes start with a lowercase p, all of my templates start with a lowercase t, all of my functions start with a lowercase f. It's, all of my attributes I tend to have to be non-plural cased. So I didn't say, I created assignment set, not assignments. Right. So I get really consistent with my naming strategy, with my attributes and with my code and all of that. And you'll have to come up with what other pattern works for you. But as soon as you kind of get to that pattern, try to stick with it, because then that will become muscle memory and make it easier for you down the road.
Sure. I think also it's necessary to keep combing your data structures, because as an example, now say if you have, as in the case of someone like you has, 200 or 400 user attributes, there's so much more the likelihood of overlap or slight change in naming, or maybe a different case, camel case as opposed to non-camel case. And that essentially now you're sending some data down the wrong rabbit hole simply because and that's just, so I want to bring up that point of, good housekeeping is also really an important part.
Well, and that goes back to the point of incremental formalization. That idea that you and I were talking about earlier, and Dave as well, that Tinderbox allows you to refactor your tool without loss of data. That refactoring isn't a nicety. It's actually a necessity. And that every once in a while you need to come back and do it. It's like spring house cleaning. You spent 6 months, you spent a year developing some things, and now you've realized you've got 3 different frameworks all working in parallel with each other. It kind of works, but it's not as efficient. Every once in a while, spend that weekend to clean everything up and then start, and go from there. And I find that exercise to be really efficient.
Well, there's also a temporal element in the sense that if you're running a file for 4 or 5 years, your objectives, your definitions, your vocabulary, your approach are all bound to go through some evolution and change. Well, that is going to impact, whatever repository, whatever second brain, or whatever data repository you're counting on.
Correct. Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, this is just for my own edification on your conditional there. Could you type the empty string, just double quotes, and omit the untitled and have the same result?
Probably. Let's see. I bet I could, because the default is going to be untitled, and that's actually a really good strategy. I might if this works, I'm going to adopt that. Right. So if you do that, and let's go ahead and create a new folder, test folder. All right. And oops, test folder. And now if we add in, yeah, that works. Yes.
Well, the on ad still says untitled.
Well, it does, because I've not changed it. So now what I would do here is, now that I want to go change for this test folder.
No. Well, but I mean, it's if I was saying the empty string, replace untitled with just the empty string. Is untitled a key?
Oh, well, you could, but you can't. Yeah, you could do that. The problem with that, though, is a note has to have a name. Right. So you can't have a note without a name. So if I go here and
where did you get untitled from?
Well, because untitled is the default. Tinderbox will automatically.
I see. Okay.
All untitled as the default.
I was wondering where that came from.
Because you can't have a note without a name. So Tinderbox calls it untitled.
All right. But in any other case, you can just use the empty string and
correct. Okay. So now, all right. So this isn't really what I wanted to get to, but this is kind of like setting the foundation, what we were talking about. So I'm a teacher and I've assigned these assignments to my students. And so now I want to go and create another folder. We'll call it submissions. All right. And let's go ahead and give that the folder prototype. And because now we know it's a P submission. And what did I call it in my other file? I actually think I called it something else. Let me double check. I'm going to come over here. I got to find it. Yeah, okay. I did call it assignment submissions. So let's just copy. I called it assignment submissions folder. And then I would have under assignments submissions folder, it's going to stay P folders, fine. And then I'll call this one like text messaging submissions. Okay, so that's going to be my text messaging submissions. And then I had a prototype I called P assessment. And so that you all see behind the scenes, what I'm doing quickly here is I've got my other main folder here, and I'm just going to grab up here, copy all of those attributes so that I could come back to this new file we're creating here and paste those in. And then Tinderbox is going to ask me to create the attributes that don't exist. Final grade, percentage, make the number, and attribute assessment reference number, which is really important. That's a set, and is update assessment is a Boolean. All right, and I'll explain all that in a minute. Okay, so let's say I have that, and let's call this one P student. All right. Okay, so let's say I had now an assignment come in, and I'm now going to assess that particular grade or that particular assignment. So let me go back to my other file and we'll go through the examples. Okay, so now I'm going to assess that text messaging example that came from the students. So I use AX as the attribute for assessment. And because now, oops, this is and I'm going to copy it from here. So we have it, and I'll show you what else I'm doing here. I'm going to copy my on add from this other file so you can see it. So I'm saying when I'm adding in, not that one. Okay, so there's a few extra little attribute thingies I'm putting into this particular file that's helpful. So when and before I paste it in here, I just want to talk it through to you. So when I want to add a new file to this text messaging submissions folder, what do I want to happen? Well, I wanted to give it the attribute. In this case, will be text txt. I wanted to add the assessment for the text assignment. I wanted to add the prototype P assignment. I wanted to add the assignment name from the parent. I wanted to add the type from the individual, and I could actually add type from parent too. Let's just do that. I'll incrementally formalize myself as we speak. And I wanted to add the assignment group in the parent. I'll leave it that. It's false. So, so in other words, the text messaging submission is the parent. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to put in the attribute assignment. I'm going to put in the attribute type, and I can also say is assignment group. So I'm adding this all to the parent. And so let's say is assignment group also equals parent. Okay, and then points, and then I need to add points here too, right? And there's ways to automate this, and you can do a whole bunch of different ways. So for this text messaging assignment, this is a 15-point assignment. It is not an individual, it's not a group assignment, it's actually an individual group. And the assignment name, remember, because I pre-populated the assignment attribute with the children of this note, because I've done that, I can now go to this note and say, where are all, go select the various assignments that are available. And I'll give you one other one just to show you here, like assignment design an iOS widget. That's another assignment I've got. Now, because I've now added this new assignment, Tinderbox is going to automatically add with the action code that design iOS widget capability. And remember, let's remind you what that action code was, collect the children. And so because I did that, I can now go here and say, grab me that text messaging campaign. So now I'm associating this set of submissions with that assignment as a text messaging campaign. And so now if I copy this code up here and place that in the on add, when I add a new assignment to this file, you'll see all I now need to do is type the student's name here, Michael Becker, and you'll see it pre-populated the name of the assignment, the category of the assignment, and the overall points that that assignment has. So that was a way I could go about going through that particular process. And the now let me show you the action code I created for an assessment. I'll copy this code from my other file, bring it over here, so you'll see that we have a blank. So on the assessment prototype, I'm going to paste in this code, and my dormant thing is not in this file, so we'll talk about that later. Yeah, David, go ahead.
How long, what iteration are you on for this particular type of work, type of task?
I mean, this is the third time I've taught this class in 12 months.
Okay, so you're well aware of the pain in the ass.
Yeah. I mean, so part of the reason why I got to this yesterday was I couldn't stand being Michael Becker from February, right? I remembered what a pain in the ass it was to grade not these 30, but these 90 tests. I also recall that Michael Becker from February being fairly inconsistent with his students. My feedback to the students was inconsistent. Moreover, the Michael Becker today doesn't remember what the Michael Becker in February was doing, because the Michael Becker in February was too freaking lazy to document it. So I'm now 6 months later having to reinvent the wheel. So all of this exercise from yesterday is me giving grace to my old self, but giving gratitude to my future self by solving it now. Right. So that's what's going on with this, right? And why I was willing to take the extra time to figure this out yesterday versus rather than just jumping in and getting the grading done. Because I know I'm teaching this class again in the spring. So I'm solving a problem that I know I'm going to have 5 months from now. So let me show you a couple things that I'm doing in this in the action code that I pasted over from my other file. And the one other thing I didn't mention to you so far is I've got this function called short title, and I've talked about this before in previous. By the way, too, another convention I've done as well is because I am constantly evolving and editing my files, I always have an extra tabs open that are focused on prototypes, outlines, that one I can delete, and templates. So these are always available to me, so I can pop over when I realize I need to increment something. They're there, and I can do that. A little trick for people that may not know: if you're in Tinderbox and you scroll down, and I'm in the prototypes folder, if you double click on this icon right here, the rectangle icon right there, that will collapse everything and just get you to that particular file and name that note. So that gets really, really helpful. So I'm going to pop over to my outline, my libraries folder, and grab my short code function. Then I'm going to go up on this file and go to hints and add in the libraries. And I'm going to paste this library function I have here. So what this is this library function is a regex. And it says basically, what I want you to do is go look at the name and essentially start at the beginning of the line, grab every piece of text up to the name to the first hyphen and a space, and then remove that, and then pass the value back to the variable short title. And now I want you to return the value of that variable to the note. So now if I go up to P assessment and we look at this this code here, you'll see what it's doing is it's saying, get the value that's being returned from the function and populate a variable called v short title. And then I want you to check, does short title not equal v short title? If it doesn't, I want you to set the value of short title to v short title. Now you're also noting here, because this is a new file, that attribute short title does not yet exist, because I've copied that code over. So if I go here and I create new attribute, short title, and I'm going to make that a string, and now we go back, you'll now see that short title is in purple because that's now telling me it does exist. So I've now created that short title. And also, and because I know this is working, I actually don't need to see it anymore. So I never put short title in my notes. But for the sake of this exercise, we'll add the short title attribute here. So now if I go up here and I did it on assignment. So let's do it on assignment 2. So we'll go up here, we'll say short title. Okay, and this is an example of incremental formalization. Once you figure this out, you're like, oh, okay, I want to do this on every note. So now I'm going to go grab that code, and I'm also going to grab that on assignments. So now that I've done that, you'll see that Tinderbox is automatically split out assignment hyphen setup and is just given me the name of the assignment without the prefix. And now what it's done as well is it's also now populated or will shortly populate as soon as it updates. This assignment collection step as well. I see what's happening. And so what I need, and again, going back to Art's example, I'm like, oh yeah, what I really want now is I want this note not to be collecting name. Now that I've got short title implemented in this system, I want to go back and have this one start collecting short title. Right. So now that I've done that, Tinderbox is going to overwrite and collect the notes the short title for all these notes. And as soon as they all dutifully update, it's now collected short title for all of them. So you'll see here, I've now got all of those recognized. And then that way now I can go back here and saying, rather than having assignment prefix, I can just grab set up text messaging campaign, right? And so that's a different kind of methodology of incremental formalization that one can go through and defining their process. So then the next thing I wanted to do here is, as I was thinking through developing my grading methodology, and again, remember, I'd never done this assignment with these students before, so I didn't know what a good assignment was, what a good outcome might look like. And a particularly good program. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this one, I want to call this one the RCS, because this is what I was actually doing yesterday. And that'll make sense in a minute. And so then and again, I don't need, and this is not going to be the way I necessarily do it always in the future, but it's certainly one that I'm going to want to start thinking about. The other thing that I was done in OMNI too, as we're doing more incremental formalization here, is on this messaging submission folder, I'm also going to add the attribute course term, I think is good. And so course term, we'll make that a set. And the course term is going to be Cal Poly Fall 2023. And if I go back and refine this, I'm copying from my other file. That's where I'm getting this. And I'm double checking here, and I actually didn't do that for my other file. So I'm going to have to add this in now. Course term equals course term parent. Okay, so now if I copy that in, and because I'm incrementally formalizing this, I'm going to go copy it into my other file now too. So now, and partly what I'm doing right now in this process is I'm doing my setup. So I'm just making sure everything's right. So this is actually a 20-point quiz. And so when I do that now, you see it's 20 points. It's now set up text messaging campaign. So I got to fix that one, and it's individual. So this one is actually should be the RCS campaign. And we'll delete that text campaign. So these are just some of the kind of pre-testing that you do. So I've got my RCS campaign, short title is RCS. That's fine. 20 points. And okay, so I'm kind of getting closer to where I want to be. So this is going to be the Michael Becker test note. And this is exactly what I went through yesterday, by the way. I was incrementally stepping this through, and I kept getting myself really anxious. I'm like, God, I've got 30 of these assignments to do, and I've got 60 more behind that I got to get done by Monday, which I'm going to spend the rest of my afternoon doing. I'm like, do I have time to be screwing with Tinderbox right now to be doing this? And the answer is yes, because I kept having to remind myself a little bit slower. You know, it's as they say in the Navy SEALs, or at least I'm assuming it came from the Navy SEAls. And David Eddy or Dave Rogers, maybe you can comment on that. But I heard there was like this military reference that slow is fast and fast is slow.
No, it's slow. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast, and it's a sniper thing.
My sniper thing. All right, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Can someone put that in the chat for me so I can pull that into our notes? And so on that same example, I'm trying to get smooth earlier so that I can be faster later is really what I was thinking about in the mantra I was having in my life. So one of the things that I was trying to, now this gets you to the next kind of piece of Tinderbox lore that that I've been figuring out, and something that we talked about 2 weeks ago, which I completely bastardized, but have been refining and learning and developing faster for myself, is efficiently leveraging the dictionaries. And one of the things I said to myself is, I said, self, what I need you to be able to do is quickly come up with a better way of being consistent with the feedback you're giving all of the students, as well as documenting what you think is a good response. And so and here's the other important thing too, as a teacher, I want to learn from my students as much as I want to teach them. And that's what I've really started to embrace too. Every time I interact with my students, I walk away with having learned something new. And in particularly, I learned something new, especially when I'm grading their assignments. And sometimes that's in an insight or a statistic, or that they might have uncovered that I didn't know about. It could have been a way of writing or a style. And sometimes my students will answer a question better than I did. So I'm going to take that answer, reword it slightly so I'm not plagiarizing them, but I've got the spirit of what I think is a better response than necessarily I'm responding to. And so what Tinderbox is doing is it's teaching me how to be able to do that, which I find really, really effective. So now I'm in this point, and I'm saying, okay, now I need a new prototype that and I'll just copy it from my other file, and I'll bring this file over so you can see it. So from my other file, I created 2 new prototypes. I've got one called the assessment, and then I've got what I'm going to call the assessment note. So let me go ahead now and paste in that new assessment note prototype. And so I've got this new prototype called assessment note. And let me go here and find it here and get the on add like we've been explaining that way. And so the on add for the assessment note is make the prototype assessment note, make the assignment equal to the assigned parent of the grandparent, make the course, and I should now that I've added this in, I can be even refining my process better. And I'll explain grandparent in just a minute, and I'll explain that last piece. Let me copy this over to my original file before I forget, because I'm improving my own work now too. Now, the in between the parentheses, this concept here is called the designator. And so you'll see here, previously when I was adding up in here, I'm saying, make it the parent. So any child to this note. So the parent of this note is RCS messaging submission. But if I go here now and paste this in, the grandparent of any note here, so let's go ahead here and add in a note. Okay, and we'll call this one assessment note. And so I can get, and the other nice thing I found that I really like with this whole process of leveraging Tinderbox 2 is you want the tool to automate what it can for you once you've built a pattern for yourself so that you have consistency. And for me, there's the difference. There's quantity, quality, and consistency. And if you can get all, and normally what I found, my dad taught me this when I was in high school. He'd jokingly say, in life, you get 2 out of 3. For instance, you can have quality, let's use that example, quality, quantity, and consistency. In most situations, you can only get 2 out of 3. You can have quality and quantity, but you may not get consistency. You could have consistency and quality, but you may not get quantity because, consistency and quality take time. And so therefore, quantity requires time to be able to do a lot. I'm finding with Tinderbox is the more and more I get good with the tool, the more and more I'm getting close to being able to have all 3, not just 2 out of 3, because I'm getting Tinderbox to automate the things for me that that will give me that consistency, that will help me with the quality. And so therefore, I can focus on quantity and let the tool handle the other 2 for me. And that's been a really important insight that I've gotten as I've developed this process. And the reason why I come up with that kind of preamble there is now when I add this new note into this note, you'll now see I've added in change the name of the note to assessment note, so that every time I now add a new note to this file, that file name is going to automatically get the prefix. And so that was really important to me. The other thing that you'll see here, which I find kind of fun and interesting, and this is what I had to figure out yesterday, is I created this new attribute called assessment reference number. And what I did was I said, make your assessment reference number equal to the last sibling order. So grab the sibling order and make it the last sibling. So in other words, the first sibling is number 1. The second sibling is number 2. And if I add a new one, Tinderbox is automatically going to make that new one number 3, because it knows the last sibling is 2. So I'm going to now make the sibling order of this note the last sibling, which has to be number 3. And when I was initially doing that, I actually did it as +1, because I was saying what I was thinking Tinderbox was doing was figure out what the last sibling is, number 2, and then I was telling it to add 1. And so now if I go and show you this and paste that in with the +1, what you're going to get now is I'm going to get 5. And it took me a while to figure out what was happening. And then what I realized, what Tinderbox was already doing the +1 for me. It already assumed what I wanted it to do, right? Because it knew 1, 2, 3. Obviously, the next sibling after the last sibling is going to be 4. So this syntax, sibling, last sibling, will automatically be making it 4. So then I realized I could just delete that 1. And therefore now when I do this one, my next sibling is going to be 6. 4. Now it's going to be 4, right? So that's another way I was able to kind of figure that out. One other thing I might want to show you all too while I'm at it. Mark Bernstein, out of a community request, did this for us the other day. If I go to, I don't know if on add actually will do it. Let's see. If I go to system prototypes on add, I don't think it will. I think it's just a string. Oh yeah, it will. So I can go up here and I can make the on add be more lines. So that way, oh, it didn't work. It should have shown more lines. That might be something we need to have Mark look at. There we go. Keep it that. There you go. Yeah, now it works. So you see now by adding more lines to the on add, I can now increase the number of lines that are shown in the displayed attribute. So that gives me more space to be editing the on add file. Like if I drop that down back to 1, the original, you'll see it's now 1. And so if I have a multi-line on add, it's hard to manage. So if I say make it 2, and it looks like for this one, I actually need it to be 3. Yep, that's enough space now for me to be able to easily edit my multi-line odd ad without having to figure it around. So is that, so am I losing you all, or is this helpful? Let me pause real quick before I move on to the next thing. Making sense, or am I totally just confused the living hell out of you all?
Michael, it is confusing. It's very hard. Your brain, obviously, well, the person who's driving the keyboard essentially knows where they're going.
Right.
And an expert, which I think you qualify as, can totally lose the audience.
Yep. That's why I'm pausing.
Yeah, and so it's for those people who are beating themselves up. Oh my God, I can't follow this. Well, that's just the way it is.
Well, it is the way it is, and you can and we are recording this, and you'll be able to come back. But what I'm trying to do, and thank you for that, David. What I'm trying to do is get to an end state that we then can come back to and slow down and show you all of the different pieces. So on that note, let's take a step and go and just reset where we're at. We started with a blank Tinderbox file, and the project that we wanted to set up was, how do we manage assignments? Like, how do I grade my assignments? That's the overarching question. So let's go ahead here and we'll do a README, and we'll say, and the README, the README question is, how do I grade assignments with quality, quantity, and consistency? You know, how can I have Tinderbox automate as much as possible in my file? Okay, so that is those are the two goals, and then how do I then give the feedback to the students in the school's LMS? Okay, so those are kind of the initial questions that I was asking myself yesterday when I was going through that. So what we've demonstrated and what you've seen me do in this process is, and let's talk about what we've covered. We've talked about prototypes. We've talked about you know, different attributes creation. We talked about attribute types. We talked about action code. Specifically, we've looked at things like on-ad. So far, we've talked about some edicts. We've talked about some functions. We specifically looked at action code like collect. That's kind of what we've done thus far. And what we've now started to do is we've now started to set up, and I'm now going to show you the next layer of automagicalness that I got out of this process. So when I was grading the assignments for the students, I came up with you know, one of the notes that I wanted to you know, one of the insights that I wanted to partake to them is, remember to test. You know, it does not play well in presentation mode. So the point I was telling them there is, the PowerPoint you've given me, while it looks good, but when you put it in presentation mode, it looks like crap. Another thing that I wanted to you know, express to them is you needed to you need to explain the brand. And I'll just do 3 of them. So this will prove my point in just a minute. You need to explain the brand. And the other one that I came up with is you need to explain the objective of the campaign. And I had a total, what end of the end came up, and another one was like X note, you know, you need to improve your use of citations. Right. So these are different types of feedback that, as I was doing the grading, I was figuring out that I wanted to be able to consistently give back to not just one student, but every student, as well as to remind me where the students may need to learn or do better while working through this particular class. So the next thing that came to mind was borrowing from the work that we did last week, 2 weeks ago, was using dictionaries. So now let me show you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to now tell Tinderbox to create this dictionary for me. And let me pull it off so I can only pull what we need. Okay, this is all the code that we need. So basically, there's a few new attributes that I need to add into this file that I will explain while we add them. So this is a Boolean. Okay, and if I come back here, this is another attribute I use for optimizing the file name changes in my file. And we need this new one, which is dictionary assessments. So I'm going to go now and add another attribute called dictionary assessments. And this will be dictionary. Okay, and in this particular file here, I'm going to add dictionary assessments. Okay, so let me walk you through the action code here that I'm doing. So I'm essentially what I'm telling Tinderbox to do here is, if this prototype if is prototype equals false, then and is no show title equals true, then I want you to basically just show that this title is not being displayed in any output. If that's not the case, then what I want you to show is show the title and then show me the count of the number of children that are in this particular note. Then down here, what I'm telling Tinderbox is I'm saying, hey, Tinderbox, what I want you to do is build a dictionary for me. And the purpose of why I want you to build this dictionary for me is I want to be able to quickly reference and code these particular notes. So what I'm saying is go and grab the ID string of the children, create a variable called a pair, create a variable called a dictionary. And now what I want you to do is grab the reference number of that particular note and grab its short title. And then I want you to then create this dictionary for me. So now if I move the screen behind, you'll see that Tinderbox is now started the process of creating a dictionary for me, 3, 4, 2, and 3. Now, the other thing that is, and I wanted to use colons, not that, so I got to fix that in this one. Let me fix it in my own code. So the other thing that that is important here is you'll notice that this note is not getting any of the short titles. So then we have like what Art was telling us before, that that this note probably doesn't have the short title functionality, which it doesn't. So what we need to do, it doesn't have it because of that. So I've got this whole optimization strategy called is dormant that we won't be able to talk through in this particular point. So now that I've removed that, you'll see that my assignments are now going to get their short titles. So now if I come back up here, we should be able to figure out what's happening. Why is that not working? All right, so I don't need this. Let's get this out of here. Okay, so now what I was able to successfully do is I've created a 3. There we go. So I've created a series of different types of feedback that I want to be able to give the students. I've got to figure out what is going wrong with that. Oh, you're right. That's what I need to do. Whoops, shoot. Sorry. Fix that down here. Okay. So now if I go here, you'll see I've gotten Tinderbox now to successfully populate a dictionary that includes all of my assessments that I want to give my students. So now that I've done that, watch, here's the next and the last piece of automagical elements that I want to share with you in the process of what I did with this particular effort. There was one other element that I then added in at the very last, which was called is update assessment. And so now if I go to my P assessment, and you'll see I've got this is updated assessment code. And I've got this is the and then I've added in this action code here that says is updated assessment equals true. Then what I want you to do is grab the stamp called grading assessment items and then set the is update assessment to false. So let me grab the last little piece of code for you that will show you that stamp. And where did I put it? Is it in the list? I've got to find it in my other file so I can give it all. So I can give you all that code. Let me copy it and look for it here. All right, almost done. Okay, there it is. So I created this stamp here, which is basically saying what I want you to do is look at all of the notes that are called inbound assessment and collect their short titles. I want you to then grab some paths, and I want you to, I need to modify this. I hard coded it right now. Oh, yeah. So I want you to look at the fall 2003 RCS text notes, and I want you to grab the reference point from that particular dictionary. So I'm asking you to go look up the dictionary and look up the index within that particular dictionary and then populate it through. And so now let me show you the outcome. So as I'm grading a student, let's say I've graded a bunch of students' work, and let's say this student got a 16 out of that, out of the possible 20 points. I'm having Tinderbox automatically calculate the final grade, and let's say they did it late, so they lost 1 point for being late. So I'm having Tinderbox automatically calculate their final grade. Should be -1. So Tinderbox will automatically calculate the final grade and then give me their final grade percentage. Now, the other thing, though, is I want to say, all right, what feedback do I want to be giving the student? Well, I can now look up here and I'm saying, all right, number one, I need you to remember to test that note. I need you to be able to explain the objectives of your campaign, and I need you to improve your citations. So here I can say, hey, Michael, great work. This was a really good job. Okay. And then if I, using this action code that I'm showing you here, if I click this button, what Tinderbox is now doing, burst of that stamp that I just walked through with you, is grabbing this text, looking up in the dictionary, and it will automatically populate the note with that feedback there. And I clearly have just broken something. So let me see what's wrong. Grading assessment items. And I need to see what I broke. All right, and there, I'm missing one step. Oh, I know what I did wrong. There's one step I'm missing that I'll have to pull in. And so then, and I'll show you the final outcome then from being able to do that. And I'll show you like with one of my students. So here, let's say, oops. right? So on that regard here, so here's an example with the code functioning working. I can say, great, hey, nice job. This is awesome. I specified what key points I want to give that person. If I click the update text and then click away, Tinderbox will go through and then automatically pre-populate the database, telling me which things I want them to be able to look up. No, I can copy that code and then paste that into the learning management system of my school's LMS. And so this kind of gives you a strategy on how you can I shouldn't say easily, but probably took me an hour and a half yesterday to come up with this methodology to be able to create some consistency for me to be able to respond to and educate my students. So I know that was a ton and a lot, but in our last couple minutes, any final thoughts, comments, keywords? Again, I'll obviously post up this demo file up online for everyone to be able to review and deconstruct. Mr. Rogers, you still with me? What do you guys think? Or has this just been totally overwhelming and way too much in an hour and a half?
I'm still here. It's someone like you who's been using the tool intensely for a couple of years has a great deal of facility, and I think exercises like this are worthwhile, especially in the recorded format, for people to go back and they can pause it and rewind it and look at it again, for finding application specific solutions to their particular problems. There's a lot of what you did applies to any number of other fields of endeavor. So I think it was worthwhile, especially, recording these things.
Well, and that was kind of my point in the very beginning. Like, there are a lot of people that will see this and say, well, I'm not a teacher, so why would I ever bother doing this?
Correct.
And that's not my point. You don't need to be a teacher. Understanding the lookups of leveraging dictionaries, of using prototypes, of using displayed expressions, of using action code.
Well, and that those tools help you manage workflows in information, where you're taking information in, you're evaluating it in some fashion, and you're creating new information or response, feedback, or whatever as a result. So that's what you can leverage with Tinderbox, is to facilitate that workflow. The specific application, may not apply to someone who's not a teacher, but there are probably many other applications where it would. As a retiree, not so much for me. Maybe if I become president of the garden club or something.
Right, but another example, let's say you're a manager and you need to do 30 employee reviews. Right, this same methodology could be set up to do employee reviews. And then you could have consistency of employee reviews. And another reason why we did this too is now I can go back and then post analyze, all 30 submissions of that particular assignment, and then see quantitatively which of them all failed on citation management, how many all failed on not providing an appropriate brand explanation. Right. So the other thing, which is really interesting, is typically you would be text only in a Tinderbox and qualitative only, but Tinderbox also allows you to essentially put quantitative assessment on what was traditionally qualitative work. And that can be really, really a powerful affordance. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're at the top of the hour, and I hope you and everyone else enjoyed this and got something out of it. I know it was a lot, but I wanted to kind of get to an end state from the start to finish of a complete, and what I would definitely argue quite complex Tinderbox exercise. But to your point, it's recorded and people can stop and methodically go through it second by second, to deconstruct what we've done. All right, and we're exactly at the top of the hour. Thank you very much for everyone listening.
Been a pleasure.
All right, see ya. Hey, by the way, Phil, before you jump off, as a teacher, do you see any value in this?
Yeah, I do something similar, just a different way.
Yeah.
But I was sitting here thinking how I might change what I do. You did get that rubric file, right? That I sent you?
I don't think so, actually.
I'll have to send it again.
Yeah, if you don't mind, that would be great.
Yeah. In fact, I'll do that as soon as I get off here and try again. And if let me know you got it.
Yeah,
If
we'll
you
do.
didn't, I'll figure something else out. I don't know if it's too big or
Yeah,
what happened.
or it could have come through and I just missed it. So if you could send that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can do that.
And again, the difference between your rubric file and this strategy is I don't know what my rubrics are yet.
Yeah.
Because I've never done these before.
Yeah, but the dictionary idea is intriguing to me for the very fact that you can capture all those rubrics.
Yes, and then
in a similar fashion.
and then
Right.
automatically populate your response that you can then give back to the students and then copy into the LMS.
Right. So I'll have to fool around with this a little bit and see if both obviously on not my main file, because I'm sure I'm gonna break something, and see if I can make it a little easier. Because I developed mine long before a lot of these functions existed. So
Exactly. And so what I want to do is not, and that was, I was thinking about that yesterday, but it was like one of those things. I had to get my grading done. So this was the fastest hack that I could do to help me get the grading done. And then in the back of my head was, I've now got to marry what I'm doing with what Phil taught me a few months ago and bring the best practices from both together. That was actually the rhetoric that was going through my head yesterday as I was going through this process.
sorry you didn't get it. It would have been a cut and paste maybe. Although this may be better.
I don't know better or worse, but it's it's when you in the moment you do what you have to do, right?
Yeah.
But it was good. All right. Well, thank you very much. And I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
See ya.